Riyad al-Maliki, the Foreign Minister of the Palestinian Authority. Sir, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate your presence here on France 24. May I start by asking you, did you hear the kind of things you wanted to hear from Emmanuel Macron today?
Well, we tried to make him to listen rather than, we hear from him. The idea is that, he's going to meet with President Trump in New York. And we thought it's very important for him to understand very well, where the Palestinians really stand and what's really their position and why they have really opted not to speak to the Americans at this particular, moment in history. And exactly why, what the Americans have done to us. And why they have done that, especially that we didn't do anything, in order for them to reciprocate with such aggressiveness and hatred and really animosity to a level of open war, against the Palestinians. So the president had the chance to speak to President Macron about that, about the realities on the ground, what the Israelis are doing to us in terms of really settlement, in terms of really Khan al-Ahmar, the Bedouin community, in there, and why the Israelis are trying really to evict the people from the Khan al-Ahmar, what that really means to the Palestinian state, to the contiguity of the Palestinian territory, and at the same time, the attacks against Al-Haram al-Aqsa, Al-Aqsa Mosque, in Jerusalem. And also about our effort to end the division between Gaza and the West Bank, and what is really needed in order for such reconciliation really to be completed successfully.
A word like reconciliation seems incredibly distant at this point. And Trump withholding the money because he said he wants you to sit down and talk to the Israelis. So why not do that if Trump will then start the funding again?
Well, Trump never really invited us to sit and to talk to the Israelis in the first place. He never said, what's really his objective. He never really talked about, his deal of the century. So, first of all, there is no invitation. Secondly, there is no negotiations. Thirdly, there is no deal of the century yet identified. So, to go to speak with the Israelis on what basis and for what, basis too. So that's really the issue. I think, the idea that, he's punishing us for not really going and negotiate with the Israelis is only that, a camouflage, because, he wants really to inject, pain on the Palestinian side, to twist their arm, in order really to acquiesce and to accept the Israeli position that, we have to really relinquish our right to statehood, our right to Jerusalem as our capital, and, of course, based on the 67 borders.
What do you think Emmanuel Macron can achieve in some way of bringing these resolutions that you're looking for, these changes you're looking for?
Well, France, that really is represented by President Macron, is a country within the European Union that really stands with the international law. And, the EU position is very clear when it comes to Jerusalem as an occupied city, as settlements as a legal, of course, legal exercise in the Palestinian occupied territories against international law, and that, they still believe in the two-state solution and in the right of the Palestinians to establish their independent state alongside the state of Israel. So this is really the position that has been really adopted by the EU, has been adopted by France, and also adopted by President Macron. So here, of course, President Macron has to play a role within France in order really to create a consensus among all the French about, that position within the EU, because France is a leading country within the EU in terms of really getting unanimous position about that, in terms of the recognition of the Palestinian state on the 67 borders, about, their, of course, need to convene for an international peace conference, and internationally, of course, in their relationship with the United States in particular, because, both countries are permanent members of the Security Council. So, yes, there is a tremendous expectation from France at the local, at, the European level, and at the international level.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. That's Riyad Al-Maliki, the Foreign Minister of the Palestinian Authority, for giving us that assessment